grabbing what you have learned and what has happened to you and incorporating it into your life and carrying it with you. And it's not about carrying baggage. It's more about, as you have done it, using humor to move forward, as I have done, kind of creating this business to help others. Life continues, and don't feel that you have to kind of push away all your feelings, but learn how to incorporate what your lessons and this life experience into your life. I think that was for me like the biggest help.
Dying of laughter.
It's not funny.
My mom has stage 4 cancer in her bones and in her breast. My dad's disease was 15 years, he died of ALS. I made a podcast about death, seemed like the thing to do. And if you're sad by all of this, well, you're gonna die too.
Hope everyone's having a good week as much as possible, as I like to say. I ended up sharing a video I did with my mom that encompassed humor and cancer on my Instagram, and it has like 500,000 views, which is kind of crazy. It's 15 seconds long. Literally, I think the shortest video I've ever made. So I'm on Instagram @_Chels. Who else? Again, that's CHELS. Who else? If you do go see it, let me know what you think and shoot me a DM. I like chatting with people that find the humor in things like grief and cancer. Today we're speaking with Anticipatory Grief Coach Patty Montoya. She's originally from Colombia, currently based in Seattle, and she started her business after the experience of losing her brother to leukemia in 2009 and her mother to pancreatic cancer in 2018. I was really grateful to hear about her perspective of having lost her brother and her mother, which is, I think, something unique to a lot of people, and yet I haven't had someone on the podcast yet who has lost both of those people specifically. So I was grateful to hear more about that, and it is really encouraging to see what some people do after experiencing tragedy, like making a business to help others. So if you could use help, she is doing free calls. You can contact her hello@titipoza.com. The business is named after her mom, TITIPOZA.com, and the email is hello@titipoza.com. We did record the interview via her cell, so the audio is a little bleeps-de-doops sometimes, but the content is great and it is a worthwhile listen. Thank you so much to Patty for coming, and let's jump into the interview. Whoops, we got a dropped call. One moment. Oh, here she is. Can you hear that? Hello?
Yes. Can you hear me well?
Yes. Thank you so much, Patty, for being here virtually. I have a lot of respect for the fact that you have lost your mother and your brother, and you have a grief business. So for those who don't know you, if you don't mind delving into a little bit about what brings you here today, that would be a great place to start.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. So excited. Of course. So for everyone that doesn't know me, I'm Patty Montoya. Basically, I built a business out of having to lose my brother when I was 18, while I was in senior year of high school. He was sick for a whole year, my senior year, so definitely not fun. And then I lost my mom 2 years ago. And with those losses, she was also sick of cancer. I've learned that there's a huge gap for caregivers and the support system of this person who's passing away. So usually everybody's like, oh my God, how's your brother? How's your mother? How's your dad? Like they would always ask about everyone else, kind of imagining that for some reason I was okay with all of this because I don't know, I was younger, and it wasn't my kid and it wasn't my wife, but it was still hard, you're still losing someone that you love and it's been part of your life for basically your whole life until that point. So I started thinking about kind of what is it that I had that I could provide to someone. And I saw this stuff, so I created this business It's called Titipoza, and we can go into the name later on. But basically, what I offer is I kind of guide you through that process from, oh, my brother, my mom, my dad, whoever has a terminally ill disease, right? And they're passing away. Um, and then so I kind of guide you through, the emotions you could have, or the situation that could come up, or how do you wanna say goodbye to this person? I found out that we are very. I know you're Jewish. I'm Catholic, so there's a very strict way of doing it for our families. But sometimes maybe we don't wanna say goodbye in that way. So there's a lot of things that just come up that I found that nobody really has the time or the experience to navigate that. So I wanted to use my experience to help other people kind of um, grieve a little bit easier, and go through that guilt a little bit easier. Make that process just a little bit easier, as as helpful as it could be.
That's so helpful to have a service like yours because there are so many things to navigate, and you know that more than the majority of young people. So that is amazing that you have this service. And one question I ask everyone who comes on the show is about your goldfish moment. And a goldfish moment is the first time you thought about or conceptualized death in some way. For some people, it was their goldfish. Does something come to mind when I say that?
Goldfish moment. Did your goldfish die? Goldfish moment. Did it make you cry?
It's funny. We grew up in farms, so I guess kind of there was always animals, but we never had animals at home. Um, I lost my grandmother, and that was hard. But I feel that the biggest moment for me was kind of when my brother passed away. I was just like, no, that does not happen to us. So I just cannot remember a moment of someone being like, hey, this is what happens, this is what death is. Um, so there's a little bit of like I get upset that people don't talk to us more about death.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I'm so sorry about your brother. I mean, I think what you went through with that and with your mom, I mean, it is pretty rare. However, there's still millions of people that have experienced that. But it's like so many of your friends perhaps didn't necessarily relate to your specific experience. So I'm so grateful you're here, that anyone who has lost a brother and their mom can relate to you. And I was hoping you could open up a little bit more about what it was like when your brother was diagnosed. We'll start there. And what was that experience like for him and for you?
Yes, of course. So it was interesting because I had just been abroad in France for 6 months, and I came back, and my brother was just very low energy, and he was very, very high energy. Um, and we were this. My mom also had breast cancer, so after she survived her breast cancer, we were like the family that like did 10K together with the T-shirts, and it's like everything is possible, type of deal. So we were preparing for those type of races, and he didn't, come. And then when the first day of school, he was in the hospital, and they were telling my dad that he could have HIV, or, like they really didn't know what he had. And my dad was so upset that, like they could think he could have HIV. So I think like we shut down that topic a little bit, and I think me being me, just being very, I it sounds horrible, but I think a little bit narcissist of like, no, this doesn't concern me, type of like protecting my feelings of like this doesn't happen to me, right? This doesn't happen to us. So he was in and out of the hospital for 9 months.
And you
And
guys
it
were in
was
high
really,
school,
really,
right, at the time?
yes, yes. So he was in ninth grade. I was in 12th grade, and my sister was in uh, Vancouver, Canada, doing her first year of college.
Mm-hmm.
So it was definitely kind of weird being the eldest in that moment, um, going to classes, trying to concentrate, trying to do SATs, applying to, colleges, trying to go out. So how it worked was that my parents were 100% dedicated to my brother, right? Like being in the hospital, doctors, appointments, anything. And then I would stay with him in the hospital on Fridays just for them, to have a minute together. Um, and as you said, like you talk to people, but I feel that at the beginning they're like, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry." Like they're so concerned, and then after a while they're like, "Okay, yeah, like that happened, but there's this party or there's this exam. Like, what are we doing about that?" And you're still in that world, and you don't know how to navigate it. Your support system is not there, right? Like my support system when my parents and my siblings and I was getting blue, they're not there for me. So it's a lot of like interesting challenges that you kind of have to learn by yourself. Um, so it was very difficult, but I feel like during my dad at the beginning of the disease, he asked me to his room and he's like, your brother has this type of leukemia and the probabilities of him surviving are very low. And I just heard that, and I'm like, but if there's 5% probability, that's us. Like, and I just blocked it. So I feel like I could have done that grieving part, but I never did. Like, for me, it was never an option that he was gonna pass away.
Mm-hmm. Oh God, that's so difficult. I mean, you were both so young, and I'm wondering how you have processed that now that, that several years ago. Obviously, I love that you say grief never goes away because I completely agree. But what has your grief felt like over the years, and how has your relationship to grief changed as time has gone on?
Yeah, that's so interesting because I feel like I tell people that I'm kind of a grief coach, and that's such a difficult question because I want to encourage people to, like move on and there's a life after, death. But my grief was extremely hard because um, my brother passed away July, and my family's from abroad, so I moved to the United States to for college. So I mean, I knew English. I went to an American school all my life, but still, it's English as my second language. A new city, and I knew everything. So I guess I really, really didn't grieve for years. Um, I kind of thought I did, like I think you tell yourself that that's what you're doing. But I hold it, and then I want to say like 2 or 3 years ago, I did a huge, uh, amazing process, and I think until last year, I really, really feel that I was in peace with his departure. All my life, I've had nightmares, and the nightmare was like, dreaming that he's alive and he's dying, and going through that process of like he's alive and he's dying, he's alive and he's dying, over and over and over and over again. And then I work with a therapist, and we did, this process. And after 5 or 6 weeks of very, very difficult work, it was the nightmares were gone. And um, like there's still this sadness of like I get angry that people have siblings and I don't, and what if and what could have been. But at the end of the day, I really try to be like, this is um, I miss him and I love him, but I think I'm okay without him. And obviously I think everybody should look at grief and departures very on their own way, but that was kind of what helped me, and that was kind of my process. That was very, very long.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah, that's really relatable when you're saying about how you miss and you love him, but you're okay. I feel that too, and it's such a strange place to come to that, at the time when you first lose someone, you just feel like you'll never be okay. And then I don't know about you, but I've actually felt bad sometimes about that I don't miss him every day anymore, but also my loss was 10 years ago. So it's a different story. But how have you accepted his loss as a permanent part of your life? Is there any advice you would have for someone in that respect?
Yeah, it's funny because I have the same situation. My brother passed away. It's going to be 11 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And at the beginning, you're like, my life is over. Like, I'm just not leaving my bed. And then with time, you're like, I don't remember him. I forget these things. I forget, I forget that I miss him. I forget that I'm sad. Um, and I think that with this process of building this company, it just kind of coming to the realization that life moves on, and you're the only one kind of staying in the past. Um, and why are we staying in the past? Like, they left, we moved on, we continued. Um, so it's kind of, my process has been really understanding that everything I feel and I do, it's normal and it's okay. Um, and missing him or not missing him is okay. There's nothing I can do right now. So why punish myself about it, right? It's
Right.
not like he's alive and I'm not visiting him. Um, so I think of that. But one of the things I would tell someone is, I think I hid my brother for so long, you know, because it's like, oh, I don't want to make anyone like feel awkward, and it's not like you're gonna go around like, hi, my name is Patty and I lost my brother, right? Of course not.
Right.
But but I would say that just be more open with that, and I think being as open about that situation, um, I think that makes it a little bit more normal, more okay, and more less of a taboo. Um, so kind of that would be my first kind of, hey, this is what I would recommend to someone that's going through something similar.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. And as if that wasn't a difficult enough. I mean, I don't mean to dramatize things, but the fact that you lost your mom in 2018, I mean, I'm like, that must have been so difficult, especially both from cancer. Could you speak to what that experience has been like for you since it's more recent? And you also mentioned, I think she had breast cancer before, and my mom has breast cancer now, so that's just interesting to me, and what the journey was like with your mom as well.
Yes, definitely. So my mom had breast cancer late 2015, and it was a very difficult process. I thought, super dramatic. I'm like, I'm gonna lose her. But as you say, like, we caught it early, and it was all okay. And then it was very beautiful because my sister had a kid, and he wasn't even a year old, and we spent Christmas all together, which is rare because she lives in Canada, I live in the United States, and it's just hard to travel for Christmas nowadays with so many people. But we had the most amazing, amazing December. Um, and she was complaining about a lot of pain. And I don't know about your mother, but I think mothers in general, and my mom especially, she was just such like a trooper. Like, she would never complain. She was always kind of that person.
Mm-hmm.
So when she was complaining about a lot of pain, and And that was December, January. I stayed for a month. My sister stayed for a whole month as well. And then when we went back, um, they they found, but the process was very. I think, I mean, I complain a little bit, and I think it's just kind of blaming someone. But the process of figuring out what she actually had was very poorly managed.
Mm.
Then they found out that she had pancreatic cancer. Um, and I don't know. I mean, not many people know, or but it's kind of the hardest like cancer you can have. It's just like it kills you so fast, and more when you're. My mom had just turned 60, like yeah, like a month ago. So it was really hard because she was super healthy. She did exercise, like as I was saying, like we used to do like 10K and triathlons and like you name it. We were just like that type of family. Um, so it was really hard for her because like, hey, like I've done everything correctly, and this happened. Um, but I have I had this feeling that there was something wasn't right. Um, and when we heard about it, I think we were all kind of like, okay, follow the checklist, right? Type of situation because we have lived through it before. Um, so I had just moved into a new apartment, like gotten a new job, and my dad, he always kind of tries not to make a fuss about anything and just kind of um, disorganize our lives, to call it a way. So
Mm-hmm.
he called us like I saw her for 2 weeks. So I went back and I saw her, and like
Was
I
she
told
in
everyone that it was
Colombia
like
at
this.
the time?
Yeah, so they live in Colombia,
Mhm.
and I traveled to Colombia, and it was just such a beautiful experience. So my mom was like, if nothing had happened, right? Like the only difference was she was a little bit more tired and she had some oxygen. But other than that, like she would laugh and she would eat and we would like tell jokes and like if nothing had happened. So we really, really had the best last memories with her. Um, but it was so fast, so it was really nice because she was at home. She told us exactly what she wanted. She wanted to, die at home. She didn't want any pain. So we had like a good palliative doctor. And now with this business, I talk a lot about all of those resources that we have that a lot of people do not know they exist. So we were super lucky, and I tell everyone that is just we were very lucky to have a lot of resources in our to our disposal. To take care of her, to be with her, to just like just to say goodbye in the best way we could. She was an artist, so before she passed away, she was kind of like going through all her paintings and like, oh, this is for this person, this is for this person, and like giving like gifts to everyone. So it was really hard, of course, it's your mom. I think at that moment I was in shock. Obviously, it was kind of like, okay, what do we have to do? Um, and I think now the grieving process has been hard because it's kind of on one end, I think I have to be like, hey, like this happens to everyone, and where we will all die, and that's okay. But still, it's hard. It's still like I miss my mom, and I wish she was here for this and here for that, and I want to call her. So those moments are obviously very, very difficult. But I've
Mhm.
been rambling. Sorry.
No, it's okay. It's a beautiful story, and it's beautiful that you are open about it, and especially, losing two immediate members of your family is a specific experience that is, I think going to be very impactful for anyone listening who has had that experience as well. And I was curious before we talk more about your business, I just wanted to also ask how your father was doing, how he's feeling, and your other sister. And yeah, how, because that's difficult for them too. And how has it been like talking to them about it?
Yes, of course. So, my dad is very practical. He has had a lot of losses in his life and just very difficult moments. So he has become very like, okay, this is what's happening. This is life. Um, so for him, it was very hard because they had been together for 45 years. Um,
Wow.
yes, my mom got married when she was 20, turning 21. Um, so yeah, it's been insane ride for them. Like they were just anything that my dad or my mom wanted to do, they were like in. They had this crazy ideas of like sailing around the world, and like those adventures that it's kind of like you don't know if you're gonna find someone that is just gonna be such a trooper, right? So definitely my dad was kind of just he was playing it cool, but later he just like he realized my mom did so much for him as I think any mom does, that you really don't realize how much they do on like backstage to call it somehow. So for him, it was hard. As I said before, like I feel that everybody was wondering about my dad. So because I was single, they were like, "Oh, but are you moving back to Colombia? Are you, like?" And I was like, "Should I? Like, what should I? Like, I don't want to. Like, I don't think I have anything here. Like, I have my life in the United States." Um, but my dad was such a like he's always been super um always wanting the best for us. So he would always say like, no, 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 please, like go. As we all say, like life doesn't end here, and kind of our slogan is we need to create our new normal, right? And this is our new normal, and life continues. So I think he was amazing at that, at just helping us kind of be like, hey, life continues. He's doing really well. We try to visit him a lot, or we're such a tight family, so we see each other as much as we can. Um, and my sister just had her second kid. It was really hard because, at least for me, just like my mom loved kids, and she was so excited to be a grandmother. But we were talking the other day, and it's just kind of life continues, and I think we all need to figure out how to move forward. Like, not like you still want to have kids, you still want to get married, you still want to have a house. So I think she's doing the best she can.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's interesting because my we lost my grandfather, so my dad's dad, um, on Wednesday, so 2 days ago. So
Wow.
yes, yes,
I'm
and
sorry to
with
hear
the
that.
pandemic,
Gosh, so much loss.
yeah,
Yeah.
yes, yes, it's been hard. I mean, with the pandemic, we cannot travel to Colombia
Mm-hmm.
until September. So I don't know. I mentioned this because there's so many ways of being there for family, and so many ways you can lose someone, right, and say goodbye to a loved one. Um, and we still need to like kind of know that life continues, and I think that's kind of what we're seeing right now. That like not being able to be together um, is hard, but we're still always there for each other. Zoom calls, FaceTime, like we have WhatsApp, and we're just a very like I don't know. We're always there for each other, no matter what. So I think that's just a beautiful thing that happened after these two people kind of passed away. We just rely much more on each other than before.
Wow. Yeah. I'm glad you're able to have that relationship with them. And I'm sure it's extremely challenging and, but it sounds like you are doing just, you're handling things really well. And I'm sure it must be very hard, but I am very inspired by your attitude on life. Because I think when you're someone who is a little bit more open about grief, like I am, or like maybe you are, it's easy to forget how many people are so charged and so upset and they can't even say it out loud without crying. And that's okay too, but we're there to support them. So speaking of your support, you have this new business, and on your website, it says you help people talk about death, the emotional support before, after, and during, legal and financial duties, advanced care planning, preparing funeral, deciding how you want to say goodbye, working through disputes, and more. Wow. I'm so interested in all of those topics, but I wanted to throw it back to you to start. Out of that list, what is something that you feel the most passionate about in terms of helping others, and or what is the thing that you are approached by most often? I thought we'd start there.
Yes, I think, I was working with a business coach for a while before kind of launching, and I would go back and forth of what I really, really wanted to do. And I always came back to this idea of, I feel that, um, I wish like I had asked more of my mom, and now with my grandfather, the same. Um, so kind of that idea and the idea of preparing to say goodbye. So I think there's a lack of knowledge of understanding that we will all go through the situation. So
Mm-hmm.
preparing and being okay, with this passing away. Um, it's funny because when my brother passed away, my mom had a ton of guilt. I think I did a ton, but I would say, like, mom, you couldn't have been a better mother. Like, literally, she could not have. And so I think that's kind of what I wanna work through with people is that feeling of you did it all. You literally did everything you could at that moment, and understanding that that's okay. Whatever it is that you did, that was what you could have done at that moment. Um, I feel we all, I don't know what your situation is, but I think we all, when I talk with clients and people, we all have so much grief, more than grief, guilt. Um, Guilt about, we could have done and I could have, and what if, and it's an idea that we're not used to letting go of someone. So we're always looking for, if I had been there earlier, she would have never passed away. And with my mom, we decided not to do any, like medical care, like it was just palliative care, because at one point you have to say goodbye and you have to be okay with saying goodbye. Like putting someone through chemo and, and medicines and needles and hospitals just to see them for 5 more months. It's not a life. So that's kind of what I want to give to people, that feeling of, I feel I did everything. I feel I asked them anything. There's a lot of people that have um, very difficult situations with their loved ones. And, even if the situation is horrible, I think a lot of times you really, really just need to say the thing. And, like, no matter what, they're leaving, right? So just get it out of your chest because you won't have another chance. So that's kind of the idea. The other main idea I have, and again, I would love to hear your experience, is that um, I am Catholic because I was raised Catholic, but I don't consider myself Catholic anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and there's this way of, saying goodbye to a loved one. But I just didn't feel that that matched with my beliefs and my rituals nowadays. So I think like just having a way of personally you saying goodbye, I think it's helpful to close that cycle. Um, Feeling that it was your decision to say goodbye. It was your way of saying goodbye. I've noticed that helps a lot of people just being like, okay, I'm okay with this. I mean, maybe not okay, but a little bit more open to saying goodbye and to, taking this loss for what it is.
Have you recently lost someone during the pandemic and you're looking to connect with other people who have lost someone, specifically a parent or a sibling? The dinner party is bringing together free virtual grief groups. There are countless free opportunities to connect with other people who have experienced a similar kind of loss to your own, and you can be anywhere and pay nothing. I can't recommend them enough. I personally host a grief group. I've had such a great experience. There's so many other tables to choose from, and they just launched yesterday a series of new tables that you can sign up for. So make sure you head to thedinnerparty.com. Check out those virtual grief groups, perhaps for you or someone you know who is grieving. I think it's really one of the nicest, warmest communities. And the fact that it doesn't cost anything is absolutely fantastic. They're also on Instagram at The Dinner Party, and they post cool and inspiring stuff. That's my rec for the day. Shout out to The Dinner Party, and I hope it helps. Yeah, absolutely. So when you say, there's a certain way with Catholics, do you mind sharing, like, what is that specific way and how did your mom's death differ from that specific way? Is that what you mean? Like, you wanted to bury her in a different way?
Yeah, so Catholics, they have a mass, which I don't, I don't attend mass anymore. And they usually have funerals and they bury the body. My dad, with my brother as well as with my mom, they cremated the body. And we have this beautiful farm, like huge mountains. So we did the same ritual for both. We invited both families. And we, hiked up to this mountain and spread the ashes to the wind, which was beautiful, right? But I noticed that I felt I wanted to say goodbye in my own way, right? I felt that I needed to have a ritual that it was just mine. Um, so in my situation, I felt like with my mom, I was the one, calling the funeral home, which I thought it was horrible. Just they give you 10 options and you're just like, I have no clue. My mom just passed away. Like, help, please. And then people are coming to say, they're sorry and they're traveling from all over the world and they want to see you. And you're just like so overwhelmed. And I felt like I became a host during this time when I wish I, right? So there's a lot of things that I'm just like, I go through those situations and I'm like, okay, if there was someone that chose the casket for me, I could have had a little bit more time saying goodbye or just processing that time. But what happens is you're just like in host mode, right? Event production mode instead of like, yeah, like I want to talk to you and I want to cry and I want to do my rituals. So I noticed that like it just stops, your ritual stops or your time stops because we were looking for my dad. My dad wanted to move out of the house, find an apartment. So we were helping him like figure life out before we came back home. So I really didn't feel that there was kind of a moment that I said goodbye to my mom in my own way, or to my brother for that matter. So I think kind of so the idea of the business is really kind of bringing, I have this checklist and I'm like, hey, like these are the things I've noticed that a lot of people go through. What do you think would be useful for you? And I'm coming up with some, pre-programmed packages to make it easier.
If you don't mind, I'd love to hear some of the things on the checklist and maybe get into like a couple tips and takeaways. Like if someone's overwhelmed right now, is there a few things on the checklist that you could share?
Yes, of course. So the biggest one for me is making a list of all the things you need and delegating, right? So
Mhm.
um, there are so many things that I feel someone can help you. It doesn't have to be you. So um, the funeral home, you don't not have to organize that, right? Someone else
Mhm.
can do it. You know, the obituary and the newspaper, someone else can write it for you. You can check it out. Um, what else? Palliative care. I feel that a lot of people do not know about this, and hospices. So, kind of educating the clients on the options they have, and providing that help of like, hey, this is what's happening. This is what Medicaid would cover, right? This is what won't cover. So I suggest kind of really looking at what you have, asking a ton of questions. Um, the doctors are there, to help you out. Ask as many questions as you can. Um, Priests and people from churches are there to help you. So remember to, like reach out to them because they're there to help you out, to coach you, to, hear you out, to hold the ceremony. And then there's like the more basic things, right? So I say if you're preparing for someone's death, is like make sure you're asking them how they want to, pass away, that they have a will, that you have like a state plan. Um, Make sure you know like what they want with their body. So at the end, there's no like confusion.
A few, let's say like the top 3 things that someone can do right now if their parent is dying, or even if they're not. I think this is an acceptable exercise that, some people might feel uncomfortable, but I'm like, hey, if you can start early, why not? I would think, and please forgive me if I'm wrong, I want to hear what you think. I would think the main things you'd want to know exactly what they want to do with the body, what the life support situation is. So if they are in a coma or terminally ill or unresponsive, if they want to be on life support or not. And yeah, like you said, the body, the burial, and also how they want that handled. And by that, I mean, are there certain people who, let's go with the will. I think the body, the will, and the funeral. I don't know. That's what I would think. What do you think? Maybe we could riff a little bit on one of those. So, like the body, for instance, how would you recommend someone even go about that conversation, and what are the options?
Yes. So I've been having this conversation since my brother passed away. Like I think the next day, with my parents, because I was so freaked out. I'm very blunt. So obviously, I think everybody should, manage it as best as they can with their family. But um, what I always say is kind of um, talk to your family about, you know, end of life. What is the care they want? Do they want at home? Do they want the hospital? Do they have a preference? Um, I think a lot of people are very scared about medicine, and just ask them like, okay, do you want to be conscious, or do you just want to like do not feel pain? And that you have to be very selfish about that. So be very clear about what is it that they want. Um, how do they want to dispose of their bodies, right? Like there's uh, cemeteries, but they're super expensive. So look into that. Like do you want there are other options? So there's like um, natural ways. You can trees. There's a lot of like natural ways of planting a tree, and there's a lot of companies that do that for you. Cremation and just spreading the ashes in some like special place for them. So I think that's a huge one. And then for me, and from what I've noticed, is money and business. So I constantly I am asking my dad, where's your money, where's your business, where's your paperwork, like make sure everything is like in paper, secure, that you know about it. So I can use Netflix. Um, what is the show called? The Tiger King.
Mm-hmm.
Um, So, with Carol, she, the situation of like the dead husband, they talk about that there was two wills, right? So kind of really knowing what your situation with the will is, because there's a lot of people that before they pass away, the new girlfriend, the nurse, the etc. changes the will. So I
Mm.
feel like I know that's super tricky, and I hate to say those things, but it seems like families fight over like so much money, or so little money, right?
Mm.
Um, so just kind of be very open about it. With my sister, we talk about it a lot. Her husband is in the Navy, so they have to do a will, and she tells me like, this is what happens. Like if both of us die, this is what happened with the kids. And this is what I want to do, and like talk about it as much as you can. Ask where the will is, who's the executive of the will. What is it? Like how do you want to manage things? So in case there's something happening when they pass away, you kind of have a better idea of what was it that they wanted, right?
Right.
And that's such a legal difficult. But I always say like if you need help, obviously I'm not a legal or a financial person, but I put that because what I want to do is bring awareness of what are the things you need to be looking at, right? Do your parents have a mortgage? Do you have to take on that mortgage? Do they have credit cards? Do they have a business? Do they have debt? Do they have money? Know about all of those because they're at the end of the day they're gonna be your responsibility, you like it or not. So the more you know about it now, the easier it will be once it happens. Tomorrow or in 10 years, who knows? Um, it's kind of a conversation I keep having with my family, and that's what I tell all my clients: just bring it up, with your siblings, cousins, uncles. Like my dad has a joke that he's like, when I die, there's gonna be like so many kids that come saying that they're my kids or girlfriends or things like that. So there's a lot of weird situations that come up when someone passes away. So kind of knowing, uh, I'm really much of like the more information you can have, the better. But that's just me.
Yeah, that's such a good point. And I think even just hearing you say it out loud is super helpful and reminding people that as uncomfortable as it is now, it's a lot more awkward later when the person is not there to articulate what they want. And as you've experienced and I've experienced, it can get really, really confusing. So I'm like, I have so many stories I could share right now, but I'm not going to make this about me. But I'll just say, yes, it can get awkward. I'm sure you've been there, and even to remind people to every year or so check in because, for instance, my mom was diagnosed a few years ago with stage 4 metastatic breast cancer. And we went over all of this stuff, which was really challenging, but also beautiful. And yet there's already things that I've forgotten since then. So maybe some people you need to check in again. I'm like, this is a good reminder for me. I'm like, wait, what did she say again? And I have a document where I wrote everything down, but do I know where it is? And has she moved the will? I need to ask her again. So it's an ongoing process for some people. And thank you for these reminders.
Yes, for sure. So one of the things my family has done is we have all of our documents, important documents, in a Google Drive, and I share access with them just in case, like something happens to me tomorrow. I want them to know, like, where's my, 401k at, and how much money I'm making, and what are my bank accounts, because that process of trying to figure that out once the person has passed away is very, very complicated. So the more you can share right now with the people you trust, of course, I think the easier it's going to be later on.
So does that mean, so thank you for sharing that about the Google Drive. That's super helpful, having these like tangible actions people can take. So would you say, like, for someone like me, should I have access to my mom's bank accounts and passwords written down somewhere right now? Like, just in case? Like, is that, I mean, obviously it's going to be case by case. Not everyone's going to be comfortable with all of that. But ideally, in a perfect world, should you have that person's passwords and social security and all that info ready to go somewhere?
100%, like 100%. So I have a client that, her dad was passing away and he could not articulate the password, right? And sometimes like one person pays for all the bills, and I've seen it. Like they have no clue where the money is. They have no clue how to reach it. And we're talking about like the wife or the husband, right? They're partners. And with my client, it was very hard to kind of figure that out. Like how are we gonna get the money out? How are we gonna prove that? And a lot of what happens is that once this person passes away, it takes a while for you to be back into business mode, right? You think you're gonna like take care of it immediately, and then 6 months pass out, like pass, and you haven't gone to the bank and figure out, how to open that bank account. So that's definitely something that I've seen. What with my family, we're very open about. My dad, for example, included me in his bank account. Like, I have a signature in his bank, and like things like that. Which obviously, that's a lot of trust. I mean, I feel like we all make our own money, and I have no need for that. But I do know how to access, my dad account, and I think if my family needed my account, they probably know how to, like I have a couple of passwords so they can reach that. I like again, my family is very open, and I think we've been through this situation, and we're trying to kind of reach my mom's Facebook and close it down, and trying to figure out the password. It's just not a fun activity to be going through when you have to, you have to pay. Like my dad has employees, and he has to. My mom would pay for all the employees, and he had no idea how to do that, and so all of those things you really don't think about it until it's like, hey, you haven't paid your employees in a month. Like we have to figure this out. It doesn't matter if you're grieving or not, right? So
Right.
things like that.
That's such a good tip. Okay, passwords in a Google Drive, and if not, at least I would say have the person write them down somewhere and have an emergency plan in place, right? So even if you can't access them today, it's like having that agreement like, hey, they're, in the office in this shelf, there's a lock and I'll put the key somewhere. I don't know. Like it's going to be different for everyone, but at least knowing where that information is going to be when the person dies. And that's such a great idea. Facebook password, Instagram password, Bank of America password, employee, LADWP, just everything. Sorry, that's water and power where I live. It's going to be different for other people.
Yes.
Just having it all somewhere is so important. Yeah, how annoying. You're grieving the loss of like your mom or your dad or whoever, and you're super depressed, and then all of a sudden you have to deal with the effing Facebook password. It's just like, that sounds like the worst unnecessary thing. So I'm so glad you're flagging that now.
And those are like the easy things, you have to think about mortgages, and you're paying, like the electricity and water just because you don't have the mental capacity to go and cancel those. So that's where I tell people, like, like make a list and delegate. And I have that list. That's kind of what I bring up. Like, hey, these are the things you should look into. I can help, or you can ask someone to help out. Like, no problem. I'm here to help and to bring awareness. At the end of the day, I just want to bring awareness to this moment that is such a delicate and difficult moment, to make it a little bit easier on everyone.
Yes, that's super nice of you. That's amazing. And I feel like time flies as we come up on an hour here.
Oh my God, yes.
Before I plug like where they can find you and everything, I just wanted to turn it over to you and say, is there anything else we didn't cover that you feel is really paramount to this conversation that you hope others who are grieving or anticipating grief, what would you like them to know?
I think for anyone in any situation, what I've learned is kind of make sure you're, speaking your truth. Make sure you're saying what you want to say. Um, like tell your parents, your loved ones that you love them, and as we were saying, prepare no matter what. But I think it's just horrible to know to have that guilt of I should have, I should have, I should have. And if you're in that situation, just remember you're doing like the most you can with what you have, and don't be so hard on yourself because it's really a very difficult situation. So be nice, and there's a lot of self-care that needs to be involved at that moment. So that's kind of my biggest tips right now.
That's so important about self-care. Yes, thank you for sharing. Like, it's such a good reminder. I feel like I always remind myself that, and yet I can never hear it enough. We need to hear it all the time. Was there a book, a film, or a podcast that was helpful to you with your grief? And that could be either directly or indirectly. Like some people have like a certain book that helped them, and some people are just like, oh, this movie was funny, so it helped me. I don't know if anything comes to mind.
Yeah, so the one that helped me the most, and I put it on my Instagram, is this TED Talk from Nora McInnes. I have to check the spelling. But basically, it's this woman that had a miscarriage, lost her dad and her husband, everything in the same year, right?
Mm-hmm.
And she has this beautiful TED Talk that says it's not about moving on, it's about moving forward with your grief. And basically, it's kind of a grabbing what you have learned and what has happened to you and incorporating it into your life and, carrying it with you. And it's not about carrying baggage. It's more about, as you have done it, using humor to move forward, as I have done, kind of creating this business to help others. Life continues, and don't feel that you have to kind of push away all your feelings, but learn how to incorporate what your lessons and this life experience into your life. I think that was for me like the biggest help.
That's amazing. Well, I would love to link that as well. So I'll get that info from
I'll send you the link. Yes.
Yeah. And then Titipoza.com, which is Titipoza.com, has your information. And the program was named after your grandmother. Is that correct?
After my mom. So Titipoza is, so in Spanish, butterfly is mariposa, and they would call her Titipoza. Very quickly, when my brother passed away, they gave me a book that talked about how, butterfly starts as a caterpillar, then, goes into a cocoon and then comes out as a beautiful butterfly. And I've used that kind of saying throughout my life after my brother passed away to kind of help me remind myself that it's a process, and at the end of the day, it's going to be so much more beautiful when we see the ending. So I thought it was just like a beautiful kind of circle to come along.
I love that. That's fantastic, and beautiful imagery as well. It says, on the website about a free consultation, and you talked about the free checklist. Is that something that's okay to mention?
Yes, of course. I have a PDF, and I can send it to you, or I can add it to the website. I have some freebies, and I haven't added as a freebie to the website, but I'll definitely do that.
Awesome. It's amazing that you offer free consultations and you have a free PDF, and I'll be sure to link that here as well. And where can people connect with you online, and what can they expect in terms of the free consultation?
Yes, so as you said, my website has a lot of information, and then I'm very active on Instagram. So it will be at Titipoza underscore coach, COACH. And basically, the first one, the first consultation is kind of understanding where you are at and making sure like we're a match that I can really help you.
Mm-hmm.
And then I can share. I'm creating some programs. If those do not fit with you, like we can do anything personalized to what your needs are. So as I said, like I give you an idea of the things I've seen that are like common during this moment, and then we can see, how best to work together. So I think it's more like I want to help you transition. So let's figure out what's the best way. I am based in Seattle, but with COVID, everything has been online, and I have actually had a lot of clients reach out internationally. So Zoom has become kind of my new office.
That's awesome and definitely relatable, to say the least. Story of our lives and deaths on
Correct.
Zoom. Well, thank you. I so appreciate you coming on, and I just think it's amazing what you're doing, that you're offering these resources, and congratulations on the launch of this grief business. It's wonderful that you're able to share some resources. And even though everyone's grief and death experiences are completely different, there is something universal about truth and about pain and about going through this. And it's really appreciated what you do.
I love that. Thank you for having me.
Yes, thanks, Patty.